Like you can't find me on the map. And we are pulling out of the old gas station. You can do it, man. You can do it. All right, here we go. Exit. Oh. I guess this is going to work. We're going to find out the hard way here. And it's not the Indiana. Is that the Indiana state line? Oh, cool. Where is my turn? There it is. Is this it? This is it. Is this? Yeah, I guess this is it. What do you know? That's not what I would have bet. Nobody coming. Nobody coming. Trying to get back up here on the old interstate. I guess I'm on the Indiana Ohio line right here. What do I got next to me? Oh, a big truck. Oh, crap. Big truck. Alrighty. Big truck. Alrighty. We are getting back at this. Submit. Oh, cool. We get to cross state line. That means I get to honk. See, and state line. Woohoo! And honk the horn. Tradition. We are back to cruising speed again. We just rolled across the border. Indiana. Going into Ohio. Okay, I'm on I-70 eastbound. Just passed over the border from Indiana into Ohio like 20 seconds ago. And hi. Hey, I said hi back. Where are you headed? I am headed. This has been a day. I am going to Greensboro, North Carolina. And I had all kinds of fun day today from the very beginning when I woke up until just a few minutes ago. And it's not over yet. I'm also coming. Where are you going? Coming along for a ride? Yeah, I like doing this at night. This helps me stay awake. But let me tell you how this day got started early this morning. I had a pickup northwest of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in a town I cannot pronounce. Falls. Mini, or something to that effect. Falls. I don't. It was a little business, and it's a 7 o'clock pickup. I got there at 6:45. I stood around for a while, and they said, "Oh no, you got to go down there to that building." I'm like, "All right, whatever." And I go down to that building, and I stand around. They go, "Oh no, go back." By the time I got to the fourth building, a guy came out and says, "Yeah, we don't have your load. It's in a different business." So I'm thinking, okay, cool. It's, across the street or down the street. No, he gets out his phone and he taps the name of it in and hits directions. It's 90 miles north. 90 miles north of where I am, and I'm in northern Wisconsin, so I'm already going off the reservation. I'm like, oh, this is just wonderful. So I have to call my dispatch and go, yeah, this load I'm here is just one pallet. I'm here to pick up. It isn't even here. It's 90 miles from here. She says, hold on. They start making phone calls and email. I'm like, great. So 90 miles on secondary roads, little farm roads, kind of a nice drive, but I'm going the wrong way. And I get up there to this business, little tiny town, little bitty bitty tiny town. And I drive around back where, they do all the shipping and receiving. I see a door, shipping, receiving. I walk in, and it's a cage. They always cage the drivers off because, we're going to run amok in the building, I guess. And this uh, big sign says, you have to check in at door number 12 before you come here. And I go, okay. And I back out, look up, but I'm at door number 11. I'm like, cool. I look to my left, it's door number 10. Past that's door number 9. I go, okay, around the corner. I walk around the corner, and there's door number 10 and door number 9. So both sides of the building meet here, and 11's the highest number, and you're telling me to go to door 12. Okay. So I have to flag some people down and go, please explain that to me. And toward 12 was like in a whole different area. But anyway, I go in there, I go, yeah, they sent me up here from that town I can't pronounce for a pickup going to Greenboro, North Carolina. And they look at me like I have two heads because they have no idea what I'm talking about. It's like, here we go again. So I spent a little over an hour waiting on this one pallet. And we load up. Nice people, actually. And I go to the water line and start heading south, and I hit Milwaukee. So I am now 5.5 hours into my day, and I'm at the starting point after circling around. So I am trying to make it down here to as close to Greenboro, North Carolina as humanly possible. And because of the late start, we're heading for Chicago. And Chicago, whoa, I know that sound. Hold on. That's a radar detector going off. Northboro, North Carolina. Greenboro, North Carolina is 850-ish miles, 900 miles from where I started after this huge delay. And I got to go through Chicago. And Chicago is, hey, what's up? We're driving. Chicago is just a nightmare. There isn't a rush hour in Chicago. It's just a nightmare of traffic. Yesterday, I went through Chicago in a type of rush hour-esque period, and I've never seen anything like that. Never in my life. We're sitting 5 lanes of traffic in the middle of town, and I'm in park. I'm just looking around. There's nobody moving. We're just sitting there looking at each other. I'm like, well, this is interesting. You sit there for 3 or 4 minutes and then put the van in gear and drive a half a car and put it back in park. I literally was able to get out, walk around the passenger side, get my gas can out, walk back around to the driver's side, flip open the door, refuel myself, close the door, walk back around the van, and put the gas can back in its place to get back in the driver's seat. We hadn't moved. That's what Chicago traffic is like. So on the way down, I spent a little extra money to use toll roads that goes around the outside, and for the most part, it worked. There's a few choke points, has to do with construction mostly, but for the most part, I got around Chicago onto Interstate 94, I think it is. And I'm like, all right, I'm home free. Wrong. There's a wall of vehicles on 94, stop and go for like 25 miles. It was just. And then finally I got to 65 South and things opened up. I made a video earlier on 65 South in the rest area that was really nice and really, really modern. It was really nice to look at and walk around. It had wind generators and all kinds of stuff. It was kind of cool. But since then, I've been clawing my way this direction, and I just went through a huge choke point of construction again. But moments ago, within the last maybe 3-4 minutes, we crossed over the border from Indiana into Ohio. And I'm still motoring along. For some odd reason, the 350 miles I put on that last tank of fuel, I was getting almost 25 miles per gallon out of this van, which is mind-bogglingly good gas mileage for a 6-cylinder delivery van. Caught me off guard. I have discovered, I'm going to flash this guy. I have discovered through trial and error that streaming in the mornings is a really bad idea. Really bad because there's nobody out here. And nobody's on in the mornings, but in the evenings, like at this time of the night, people seem to have the time or the interest, or maybe the view is more interesting. But I talked a little bit the last couple of days to almost no audience, so I'm going to rehash some things I went over, and I think I'm going to restrict most of my streaming to the evening hours, since I think this is the time people have to relax, give them something to do, whether laying in bed or whatnot. It is, okay, it is 10 minutes to 10 here in Eastern time. It's like crossed over in time. You got to watch your phone; it'll tell you. It does that. But yesterday, I was talking about the jukebox, and I have when you have a channel. Somebody had to show me this, by the way. When you have a YouTube channel, you have something called YouTube Studio, and it shows you all your numbers, how much people watch and which videos are more popular and blah 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 blah. Deathclaw, hold on a sec here. I gotta watch out the windows. You don't want to get anywhere near a truck flashing on the side of the road. Death comes. Walked in with a can of Mobile 1030 and a pair of jumper cables and a saddle. Anyway, on my YouTube Studio, it tells you the claimed age group of the people that watch your channel. And like 42% of the people on here are 65 plus, which is kind of awesome because I don't have to explain details of things that happened, years gone by. And I kind of appreciate that. So I can talk about stuff that happened in the 80s or the 70s, and people went to it. But what I want to talk about was the jukebox. And I did a little research, and the word juke or juke, which is Joog, means rowdy crowd or rowdy dancing. And the first jukebox was actually made in 1890, and the basic concept was it was music it's like a record player. It's music being played without a band being present. And the jukeboxes that we think of today, the heyday, were the ones from the 40s to the 60s. That was the big glass ones with the neon lights and did all that stuff. Sorry to interrupt. That was an old Jeff Foxworthy joke. Yeah, I vaguely remembered that about the jumper cables in the saddle. But the jukeboxes, the classic ones we think of, were from the 1940s until right around 1960. It just, for some reason, the popularity of jukeboxes tapered quickly. But I didn't realize this, but if you think about the machinery of the 1950s, it's mechanical, yet somehow they were able to count, or they actually kept track of which song was played the most. I didn't know they had a counter in there that did that. But they would make note of which songs people listen to, and that like we have the top 40 countdown and stuff like that. Well, back then they had a jukebox countdown, and I don't know if they put it on early generation TV or if it was a newspaper. I don't have a clue how they broadcast it, but they did it till 1960. And then, like I said, the popularity of jukeboxes kind of fizzled a little bit, and they weren't doing it. And then they work into the 70s, and they would have those ugly ones. And I remember those as a kid. The ugly ones that had the big flat face on it. And then it went to the 80s where they had compact discs in them, CDs. And now it's just a big ugly box in the corner with a satellite radio hookup. And the only place I know of you see those modern ugly ones is at Waffle House. And nobody touches them because it's just a gigantic box that you could put into a cell phone, do the same thing. So they're kind of gone. But there is a nostalgia for the older ones, the ones from the 40s, 50s, and maybe a little bit into the 60s. The ones like they had on Happy Days. Remember the big one with the flashing lights? And if you haven't seen an operational 1950s jukebox, it's kind of a neat piece of hardware considering it's non-computerized. And it has an arm. It has a records and like a revolver. It turns the table around. It has a little tiny 45 records, and a mechanical arm reaches over and grabs the record, picks it up, twists it, and sets it on the little turntable, and the record can go in and plays the song. And when it's done, it picks it up, puts it back in the rack. And the brands that made it, there was like 4 or 5 different brands. Wurlitzer was one of the big ones. And there's another one I remember that's called a Rockola. And there was a couple other out there, but those are the bigger ones. And some of those are extremely valuable today. The old 1950s classic neon light jukeboxes are collector's items. And which brings me to the story of today. My mother dated this guy in college back in the early 60s and ended up coming back together again and got married in 2009. That's my stepdad, Dave, Super Dave. And they lived in North Carolina until he retired formally. And they packed up and moved to Texas, where they live now, near us. And, out in the barn, he had a jukebox that he bought in the 1970s just for fun. He went to some kind of a big dealer that sold, games and whatnot. And he said, I want a jukebox. He said, well, which one do you want? He just pointed at random and said, yeah, give me that one. And he had it for years and years and years. And eventually, for whatever reason, he stopped using it, parked it in the barn, put a tarp over it, forgot about it. The records were pulled out because you can't leave those old, 45s. You can't leave them out. And I don't even know what happened to them. But the jukebox was intact. It didn't work. It needed to be restored. It had all the parts, had the change box, had everything with it, but it was out in the barn. And they're packing up to leave and move out west. And they decide they're going to sell it. It's just too delicate. They don't really need it, so they're going to sell it. And Super Dave's going to sell it for, he wants to sell for $500. My mother's going to be a tough guy, and she wants to sell for $800. And I came out to help them with their move. And they were going to list it or try to sell it to like the realtor or something. I said, well, hold on, let me do a little research. And I started digging around online to find out what I could, what there was to find about jukeboxes, because honestly, I don't know jack squat about them. And again, there's the popularity, and some of them today are worth a certain amount of money. And then I found out there was this one very desirable box made by Wurlitzer, and it was called a Centennial 200. Came out in 1957. And the difference between that and every other jukebox is that arm would reach over and grab the record and do its thing. The Centennial 200, the arm could reach forward, but it could also reach backwards, so it could get the other side of the record. So instead of having 100 songs, you had 200. And that made it kind of an oddball design. And they only made 375 of them total. And I said, what kind of jukebox is it? Because that's a Wurlitzer. And I go, what model is it? I don't know. So I walk out there and I pull the cover off, and it's a unicorn. And I walked back in. I said, do you have any idea what you're sitting on out here? And he goes, well, yeah, sure. I said, no, you got a very valuable jukebox is what you have. A very valuable collector's item. Everybody wants a jukebox. And he goes, yeah, really? I said, well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to list it on eBay. Remember, this is 2009. So I go out and take a bunch of pictures, about 25 pictures of it. And I got a pretty, well, I guess I still have it, a pretty big eBay page. And I get on there and I take all these, I list it. Remember, he wants 500, my mother wants 800. I listed it, starting bid, $4,000. And then when you go to buy it now, you have to go like 30% up. So I ended up listing it, buy it now for $6,500. This non-operational unicorn jukebox. And I hit go, start it now, just was middle of the day. And if anybody here has ever done eBay, when you list something, you have a tendency to go around the other side and look at it, from the outside, see what it looks like. So I did something. I don't remember. I was doing something at the table. So then I went to look at the listing. I couldn't find it. I'm like, wait a minute. I started searching and it wasn't popping up. So I go back to my page and I look under the sold category. That jukebox sold for $6,500 buy it now price in 1 minute and 7 seconds. I went, Dave, what? It's sold. You're making, no, come here, look. He's like, really? Yeah. They wanted this bad. So there was a contact, and he called the guy's phone number. The guy said, yeah, I just bought it. You got anything else? And he said, no, but I wish I did. So that jukebox paid for the whole move. I mean, paid for their entire move out to Texas, and I thought that was kind of awesome. That was my favorite sail ever on there. Alrighty. Like I said, I am motoring on I-70 at this particular moment, eastbound, about probably 15 miles into Ohio from Indiana. We're going up here, and I'm going to be turning on 75 South. My destination is Greenboro, North Carolina, to a business that opens at 8 o'clock in the morning. And they need it by noon. My GPS says I'll be there at 4:50 in the morning. I don't know if I'm going to go that far. I don't know if I can go that far. But the reason I want to get this there as soon as humanly possible is I want to get back on the board, because if I don't get a load tomorrow, like a weekend run, I'm going to be stuck hanging out in Greenboro for the weekend doing nothing. And I don't know if I have the patience for that. So I'm going to try to get this thing there as soon as humanly possible, and then I'm going to go to sleep and see if I can get some sleep in there and get a load that'll take me up like a Monday delivery. I love Texas or California run, and I've let everybody know that's what I'm hoping for. Good long weekend run. I got Deathclaw, I got Battles of Crazy, yeah, my normal. And that's my entertainment. I just pulled in and got gas. Gas through here is a little over $3 a gallon. That sucks. I'm using the Upside app, so I'm saving 15 cents a gallon, but I don't see that for a while. And I just got something to eat. There was Petro has a restaurant called the Iron Skillet. And you go into the dining area. Everybody in there is a truck driver. You can tell they are wearing those headsets. Ironically, I'm wearing one right now. I'm not talking through the speaker. I'm talking through the headset speaker. Try this little different. So everybody was in there and everybody was staring at their phone. But I got cod fish. I usually don't eat fish, but tried that, got something to drink, and now I'm back on the road. And I was hoping some people on here could help me stay awake. So I got a little more distance to go. So that clock says 6 hours, 7 hours. Jeez, I can't get that far. I'm going to go as far as I can tonight. And I have people from overseas jump on here. I have had people from Berlin, Great Britain, at night. New Zealand, Australia. Had a guy from Ethiopia. Another guy from India came on here late at night. I kind of enjoyed it. But I'm watching the screen if anybody has anything they want to toss out. Questions or comments or topics. I am open to anything. My favorite, politics, religion. Just kidding. Anything, bud. So, do that. Oof. Some guy, you get stuck in Greenboro over the Liberty weekend. It like the grocery store in one of those quick grills, triple steak, drink a beer, and have fun. Yes and no. I don't actually drink, so that can't happen. That won't be out. But yeah, technically I'm on the clock. They can call. It's just the chances of getting a call are pretty slim. It's just Saturday, maybe Sunday, never. It's just the nature of this business. Where are you right now? I am on I-70 eastbound. I'm probably 25 miles across the border from Indiana into Ohio. I am coming up. It's showing a branch off. I'm going to hit 75 south near Dayton. But yeah, what I do, if I get stuck somewhere or I don't think I'm going to be driving, I find museums. I like military museums and aviation museums, history stuff. And I would take video and put them under one of my playlists called Scenic Route. But I did a live stream of a Titanic thing, and it was a disaster because it was in a building and it interrupted the video so bad it was a dumpster fire. So if I get a car museum or an aircraft museum or something, I'll live stream it and I'll walk around it and let people see what's going on. Cook a steak and have a duels. That's horrible. Where are you going? I am en route to Greenboro, North Carolina. And since I got back into expediting here in March, I have not been to the Carolinas once, and I used to go there all the time. I have some kind of machine parts in here in a low-lying pallet. I'm not really sure what it is. The pallet's not even up to my knee, but it's heavy. I think they had something to do with Volvo, I think was mentioned. I went to the Harley Davidson plant yesterday. Got in there and dropped off a box of something. I think they were badges, like that go on the gas tank. Sometimes they have shortages. Sometimes something gets broken. It happens in manufacturing. Like I once had a whole load of dipsticks in the van. I hit a Ford plant once making a delivery, and there was a sign at the security desk that said cheesecake $3. And she made me buy this really nice cheesecake in this plastic cup with strawberries and stuff on top. Came with a spoon. She made me. That's my story, and I'm sticking with it. But she knows her audience because Whiteville, West Virginia. Whiteville. I stopped at Whiteville. I stopped at I did a laundromat. I hit a laundromat in that town. It was a laundromat on the side of a hill. It was like you walk out the back door, you'd have fallen off a cliff. But it was in Whiteville because I've been through there a million times. That was a few years ago. But that's one of the towns it seems like it was on the south side of town. And it was literally out the back door, you'd fall over. Well, it is 2200 is the time I might play time. I have a long day tomorrow moving cattle. All right. Yeah. Shower. Yeah. Get that August shower out of the way. You almost ran out of month there. That's cool. Yeah. I'm going to go until I can't go anymore tonight. I'm just going to keep driving. Needed there by noon, not considering there was a 5.5 hour delay in the middle of all this today while we go find the part 90 miles north. But yeah, after that dumpster fire. So like I said, I spent 5.5 hours this morning just to get to the starting point. So yeah, that's frustrating. But I hear you. Got to go do your thing. This is my new thing, driving. And I don't want to brag, but I have found out I can harmonize really good with songs on the radio. Again, it's my story, and I'm telling it. And seat dancing is becoming one of my specialties. Is this guy coming over or not? Yes, no, maybe, no. Another thing about driving at night that I really like, it's right at 10:05 here. This is about the time everybody gets off the road. All the casual drivers disappear. And all you have are trucks and sprinter vans like me. Other than that, it's usually really quiet out there. And the further into the night you get, the better it is. My absolute favorite time to drive is at night. I like getting on secondary roads where nobody's around. And then I can use my high beams because the lights on this van buckets very large. Wow. I gassed up 26 miles ago, and I'm getting 25.8 miles per gallon. That is mesmerizingly good gas mileage in this vehicle. But I set my cruise on 62, and I put the injector. I just poured some more injector cleaner in. I keep a little stash of that going. I think it is making a difference. Lucas makes it in seafoam. Put it in your tank, put fuel on top of it to mix it in. I think it makes a difference. But I like going on secondary roads where there's nobody around and I can use my bucket lights. About a month ago, I don't remember, what was I? Minnesota? You lose track. I did a pickup, and I told the GPS take me direct, and it was 25 miles. And it's in one of my videos somewhere, and it was down a single lane goat track through the woods. It was 25 miles rubbing bushes on both sides of the van, and my antenna, my CB antenna, was slapping trees, and I had my high beams on. And I filmed it. And Bigfoot could have jumped out and eat me. A mass murderer could have been standing next to the van, and I wouldn't have seen him until he started stabbing me full of holes. I mean, it was creepy. And if a vehicle came the other direction, I don't know what the plan was, because you couldn't walk past the van, let alone drive. But that was 25 miles of that. But it cut my driveway down, and I zigzagged through the woods and popped out at my pickup in some little tiny little town. But this little goat track was like, how did the GPS even put me on that? Because it wasn't paved for the most part. What's this guy doing? There you go. Do, 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 do. Ah, another one. 60. Whoa, I could turn that off. Heck, it just dropped from 73 to 65 degrees. That was quite sudden. 2.8 miles to my turn. This is the exciting part. Look, that. I have, and I'm down to 0 people on here. So, 0. Coming up on my big exciting turn south. And the only thing that blows about going south is it starts getting warmer. Even though I was over by Indianapolis the other day, and I woke up and it was 45 degrees outside in August in Indianapolis. That was a bit of a shocker. 1.5. Uh, we are in the outskirts of Dayton right now, getting ready to turn south on Interstate 705. It's Dayton, Ohio. Clear. Dayton, Toledo. Our company's headquarters is in Toledo, right there on the lake. Hold on here. 1.1. That's right. We're about to get this baby up on 2 wheels. That's what I understood. 2544. Anybody just jumping on board? We are in Ohio, eastbound on 70, coming into Dayton, and we're about to turn southbound on 75. And my ultimate destination, or as close as I can get, is Greenboro, North Carolina. Sliding over, signal, mirrors, we're good. Mirrors, mirrors, mirrors. The mirrors are adjustable, but the wide-angle mirrors are not, and they're designed for somebody much shorter than me. I gotta duck down to look at them, and that kind of sucks. You can't move the things around. Looking out the window here. Hold on a second. 2 tenths. Off cruise. We'll let it coast a little bit. Toledo. Yeah, our company's the head shed has a place the drivers can get into. They have washers and dryers, showers, and a TV and some chairs right there. Dropping off paperwork or passing through town. It's actually kind of nice, and I've done my laundry and used the shower a couple of times passing through. I also gave my gas can, the fuel in my can to a girl in the parking lot that somehow managed to run her van out of fuel in the parking lot. I'm not really sure how she did that. Oh, we're going cross country. Cool. Come on, you get up to speed. All right, I'm getting on 35. What is that? I guess we're going to find out here in a minute, aren't we? Yeah, this is the outskirts of Dayton, Ohio, right here, as I'm understanding it. Everybody's running their mouth on the radio. Radios have been lit up today. Keep going through a lot of construction, a lot of stop and goes, whatnot, and the radio traffic has been higher than normal. Whereas the CB radios used to be really, really busy back in the 70s and 80s and into the 90s, it's kind of faded out. Everybody's listening, but nobody's talking. Unless something happens. What's that say? Right lane ends quarter mile. That's me. All right, you're not next to me, you're not next to me. I got 6.9 miles and we're getting off on 35. I don't even know what that is. You see this string of lights in the middle of the road, 6-cylinder turbo diesel. Tried weird thing. Too bigger. Try. No, this isn't a diesel. This is gas. I'm running a 3.5 turbo, and I'm getting 25.7 miles per gallon. I'm running regular gas in it. I just poured in a bottle of this one was a Seafoam cleaner, the fuel system cleaner, and I set my cruise control on 62. Speed limit 70, I go 62. Speed limit 75, I go 62. Ford, yes. This is the Ford Transit van. You basically have three choices if you're going to get into this line of work. You can do the Transit 150, 250, 350, the Dodge ProMaster, which comes in various models. And I looked to buy one, and I found out they're not designed for somebody with my build. Whereas the Transit's like driving a car, the ProMaster is like driving a bus. Let's see. Trying to read that. Hey Zeus, how you doing? Where are you from, by the way? The steering column in the ProMaster goes down as opposed to forward, and the seating position's a little awkward. And it would work for some people, but I can barely reach the steering wheel sitting in it. It's just my dimensions are too tall for the interior. And I've had one of these in the past when I was expediting years ago. I really like, okay, this guy's going to stroll. All right, going around this guy. I'm going to guess that guy's drunk because the drunks always get in the right lane and go under the speed limit. Tradition. It sounds incredible. Oh, it is. I normally in rolling hills and various winds, my mileage goes 21, 22, occasionally 23, but today it's been insane. Showing 26 right now. But I've had a good tailwind for the most part of the day. But that is really good mileage, and I'm wondering if the cleaning out the cylinders had something to do with it, because I don't know how long it takes for that stuff to take effect. But if you think about it, I get in this van and start it up, and I cruise consistently for hours and hours and hours, at the same speed. I'm thinking stoners do similar. I think the consistency of it being warmed up and running at a constant speed and RPM, I think that lets the cleaner take full effect. Not cold starting it repeatedly. I apologize here. I'm having to watch the road a little bit more than normal because it's getting a little tight in here. 3.5 miles. Getting off on something. Oh, like I said, I'm having to watch the road right now. Oh, and the third van you could choose from is the Mercedes, which, there you go. The people who have them like them. Just keep in mind that all vans need maintenance, and the fact that anything you put or do to that van has the letter M on it, which automatically needs to cost 3 or 4 times as much. So just remember that. And there's a heck of a lot more Ford and Dodge dealers out there than there are Mercedes dealers if you need parts or something done. Turbo, all right, doing most efficient. Then, yeah, years ago, turbochargers were great, but they weren't very reliable and they burn up and they're like freakishly expensive. Now they're extremely reliable and cheap to replace, comparatively speaking. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. As long as you keep clean fuel, clean air, and clean oil, well, these turbo vehicles go on forever. I've got 157,000 miles on this thing right now. It runs. One doesn't burn oil, doesn't leak, but again, it's 100% highway cruising. Continue on I-75 south. Okay, I will. I'm trying to split my attention here to drive the GPS into the phone. So hold on. Wee. Up. Yeah, it's a big city right there. No, yeah, my car that I sold to buy this, I had a Mini Cooper, and it was turbo with a 3-cylinder engine, and I was like, ugh, 3-cylinder. Ugh. Tell you what, that thing ran like a top. It was a lot of fun to drive. And don't buy shut down turbo trailer. Don't say buy before shut down turbo. Okay. Okay, I'm getting off on exit 53, 52. That was 53. Hold on a second. Attention outside the vehicle again. Exit. I don't know why, but it's put me off on exit 52. Cincy South. Right, nobody on my right. Got people on my left. Stand by. Yeah, look at all those lights out there. 52, that's me. What's my highway going to do? We're about to find out. Shoot. This is why I prefer being out in the middle of nowhere. Clear right, clear right. Coming over. East 35, Xena. That's it, right there. No idea why it's taking me here. We're going to find out. You ever get this real heavy traffic? You can see the traffic's blocked, lanes are blocked to the horizon. There's always that one guy dodging in and out of the lanes thinking he's going to find some magical fast lane to get into. Wow, this is a pretty cool view up here. But it never works out that way. Short nuts wing it. Look at all that. Yeah. I had a guy on here. He's from India. He was mesmerized by what the roads look like here because in his country it's like totally different. I think I was in Missouri in the morning. It was a little bit foggy out. The sun was just coming up. All right, how far do I go? I'm sorry I'm having to get outside the vehicle here a little bit more. 5.8 miles, follow 35 east. There it is. Like Xenia? Well, we're eastbound, I can tell you that much. I covered, when I was flying helicopters, I covered a contract, I don't remember, somewhere around here. And I flew into Indianapolis. It was a hospital I had to pick up or drop off at. And when you come into, a big international airport, big airspace like that, you got to see what the airspace is. And the hospital was just outside, so I didn't have to talk to anybody, which makes my life easier. But it was Class C airspace, and around big airports, it's Class B, it's more restrictive. And then once you get up at altitude, about I think it's 18,000 feet, it's Class A. That's for the big airliners. So Class B is like the most restricted, and I couldn't believe that Indianapolis couldn't score a Class B. They were really making sure, yeah, one bike. I've actually, while we're driving along here, I have seen more than a few motorcycles go shooting past. I don't know if you've noticed them, but these guys, when they're going, they're going. Yeah, I've talking about motorcycles. In my lifetime, I sat down and did the math. I've owned 15 motorcycles in my life. And honest to God, the favorite one I've ever had, I drive right now, which is a Suzuki Bergman scooter, a 200cc scooter with a giant trunk that the wife and I can get on and ride down the interstate on, which makes no sense why that thing does that. But that has been my favorite motorcycle I've ever owned, period. And it's a scooter. And the fastest I ever went on a motorcycle was another guy's back in the 80s. It was an Interceptor. Remember those? I don't think they make those anymore. But I rode his Interceptor. I think I had it going 135. It was in the dark, which is idiotic. But I think I was doing that on that one. Alrighty, that back was my stay awake juice. Speed limit is 55 through here. I'm doing 57. So I'm kind of holding back because I do not know this road at all. We got 2.9 miles to go. Hold on here. I'm going to get around this guy. He's on the right. You see these walls? If you're not from this part of the world, those walls are sound barriers. They're just there to bounce the sound. Airspace, turboprops, pressurized piston, all the time. Yeah, it's Class A. Yeah, but I flew helicopters. We don't have a whole lot of business being up there. So I didn't get that high up. I mean, I was up at altitude in Colorado, but that was by force. But there's no reason to be up in a helicopter at that altitude. There's a great story on YouTube. It's called the LA Speed Story. If you ever get bored and got a minute, go watch that or listen to it. It's funny as hell, and it's about airspace. Because Class A airspace goes up to 60,000 feet. And above that, because there's just about nothing that operates above 60,000 feet, that's Class G, and G is the free-for-all. There's no control. There's some, very little, but there are some places in and around the United States that have Class G, but it's very small places, and it's getting smaller. But above 60 grand, 60,000 is Class G. There's literally no regulations or what you're doing. But then again, there's not a whole lot of people that know how to have the capabilities getting up there. And the LA Speed Story actually talks about that. That's the one. That guy, I've heard a couple of variations of him telling it, and they're all funny. Every one of them is funny. I flew out in the Gulf. I flew various aircraft, but my favorite for that job was a Bell 407. And a VNE on a 407 is 140 knots. And we had, in the company I was flying for, we had all these 407s that all matched except for this one that had an oddball paint job. It was red and white. It didn't match the fleet, because that's how you acquire aircraft here. Now, hold on a second, see what this road does up here. But you acquire, different aircraft, different companies. So I had this one. It was November 7 Zulu Zulu was the tail number on it. And it had, for some reason, it was freakishly fast. A 407 loaded down at 85% cruise. If you take that stupid weight off the top, it does about $120, loaded. He looked stocky, short. Yeah, he did. That's actually a good thing for pilots, is being short, to be honest with you. Okay, I get to go 74 miles on this. But 407s, generally speaking, do $120, $1.25 at cruise. And the particular one I had, for absolutely no reason, would do 135 all day long. And VNE in one of those is 140. So occasionally it would start to speed up and try to bump the red line. So I had to keep an eye on it. And I had a contract. It was 104 miles out. It was way late in the day, and I was going out, and the winds were picking up, and they were picking up. To the point that I shouldn't have been flying. It was so windy outside, but I was going out. And I just kept listening. It was a perfect tailwind, and I had a ground speed of like 205 knots. So you hold up a second. The Bell 222, which is I don't think the 222s are around anymore. I'll be honest with you. And the main thing about the 222 is it's a sexy looking aircraft, but it's not that. It's not all that in a bag of chips. Generally speaking, helicopter rotor systems come into two categories. You have a rigid and a semi-rigid. A rigid helicopter blade is a teeter-totter, for lack of a better word. And like the old Hueys, the Vietnam era Hueys were a teeter-totter. The R-44 is a semi-rigid. It's a teeter-totter. And the 222, the Hueys, it's an older style and older technology, where the articulate rotor systems is each blade is independent of the others. It can flex. And that gives you a lot more versatility for what you can do, how it reacts, and how maneuverable the aircraft is. And you have limited time for more speed. Yeah, a lot of people train in the R-22s and in the R-44s. My total, I retired with 16,900 hours of flight time, and my total piston experience was riding as a passenger in a R-44, in a 44 at night, which had really good visibility. I remember that, but I was a passenger. But that's the total of my experience on Fiat 6 engine. The six, is it a six banger? Six. I don't really know anything about it other than they're tiny. Okay, so I am on 35 for the next 71 miles. And I guess my mother is watching this because she just chimed in to let me know I was on the right road. See? If only you could have a mother keeping an eye on you. So anyway, I'm flying offshore, and I've got this howling tailwind. Called the platform. Oh, I don't want to see that. Expressway yet. I called the platform on the radio, and I said, "Hey, you guys ever seen a 200-knot helicopter?" And they said, "Why, no, I have not." And I said, "Come out back on the porch." And I dove down, and I shot past them. That's why I think I was in a shallow dive. I hit 208. It went zipping past them. It pulled up into a zoom climb, as they call it. Okay, it looks like Oh, I tell you what, I was not anticipating traffic lights today. But here we go. Let's see what happens. I'm supposed to go straight through here. Oh, they're still green. Knock on wood. Says Steven, is it taking you towards Cleveland? I hope not. No, I'm going straight east right now. I went through Daytona, went south for a while, and then turned straight east. But why are we going through town? Limit, green light. Very tight safety margin. You need alert. Yeah, that was what somebody told me about the 22, about the rotor head on there, the auto rotation. He said you get an engine failure, you have a fraction of a nanosecond to respond to it. In a Cobra, which is what I flew in the Army, that rotor blade was like 3.5 feet wide. You could be in front of the hangar, flat pitch at 100% throttle, shut the engine off, pick up to a hover, fly it to the other, up over the hangar and land it on the other side. And I'm not making that up. That thing had inertia for days. Big old fat, heavy rotor system. Well, that was kind of okay. We went through town. Huh. Looks like we're back out in the country. Wow, that worked. That was totally cool. No, I'm not going towards Cleveland. Cleveland's way north of here. I used to live in the outskirts of Cleveland back in the mid-'80s for about 6 months when I was a kid. Willoughby Hills is the name of the town. Yeah, I've walked up to an R-22. I don't think I could even get in that thing physically. It was teeny tiny. Oh, more traffic lights. Yeah, I flew the old, I learned how to fly in a Huey and I flew Cobras in the Army. And then I got out, it was Jet Ranger, Long Ranger for the longest. And then years later, I went to the 407, the Eurocopters. And the 407 Eurocopters are all automatic starts, all electronic stuff. 3-blade Bumblebee Hill Schweitzer. Super fun, safe, four class slow. The bubble, wait a minute, to the right. The big bubbles, the old Bell 47s, and the Schweitzer is that weird looking one. The Army used those as training helicopters from 64 to 1988. And then they would teach students on those and then move them into Hueys. Well, I got to flight school in 89. So we went straight to Hueys, bypassed those, the Schweitzer 300s. And hold on, excuse me. And that sneeze of dawn is genetic from my mother. But the Army training aircraft's called a T this or T that. Well, training helicopter TH, and the Schweitzer 300s were called TH-55s. And every flight class has a T-shirt. They have shirts printed out. And they have like a motto. And the first flight class, because they got to where they didn't fly the TH-55s anymore. And the very first flight class that didn't use them, just went straight to Hueys, had a picture of Sammy Hagar on their shirt that says, "I can't fly 55s." And that was their class motto. You got COVID. It's all over. Yeah, that's what it is. It's either that or the Ebola virus or mad cow disease or something. Ugh. My mother gave me the sneeze-a-thon gene because she does that. I have to apologize, but I got to blow my schnoz now. I'm leaking. Hold on. Whew, boy, that was bad. There's my trash bag. All right, I'm following this. This is 35, and it looks like I'm sharing it. No, 35. Now I'm going southeast bound, so it's windy a little bit. Got COVID. I literally didn't know. I don't know anybody, literally anybody who got COVID. All right, I'm at 56 miles on this tank, and I'm getting 24.9 miles per gallon out of this thing. So I'm not complaining. Yes, the Bell 407 and the Eurocopters. You just set the throttle and hit the start button. And the aircraft does it itself, whereas on a Jet Ranger, Long Ranger, Cobra, or Huey, you have to modulate. One good sneeze, fun. After 3 suck. Yeah, my mother's record, I think, is 9. My brother and I would sit there and count with our fingers when she would start sneezing. We would say, by the time she got to 6, we're like, okay, Mom, that's enough. You can stop now. Ugh. Yeah, so you get used to the, set the throttle, hit the button, and start her up. That's about a helicopter is helicopters don't have keys. You say, oh my God, is somebody going to steal this? Well, the people who know how to fly them are not going to steal it. And the people that don't know how to fly them have absolutely no clue how to start it, let alone fly it. And I don't care how good you are at video games. It's not going to work. You try that on this aircraft. There was a drunk guy in Florida that went to a medical base by the beach, and he was going to steal their medical helicopter, the drunk guy, and, quote, fly it up and down the beach. And he got as far as blowing the floats. That's as far as he got the flying. They just don't get to jump in and hit the trigger, push a button, fired like a car or something like that. Ooh. So this is 35 east. I'm going to say I'm southeast of Dayton, Ohio. And it looks like it's going towards Jackson. This is what the GPS is telling me. And my ultimate destination, as close as I can get, is going to be Greenboro, North Carolina. And I'm going to go as far as I can until I can't go anymore. And that's when I'm going to stop. Right now, I'm doing okay. Might put the headlights up here soon. The tandem gyrocopter, no longer dangerous, so inherently. A gyrocopter is basically you're flying around in an auto rotation. Engine quits in a helicopter, you auto rotate. And basically you're flying around in an auto rotation in that thing. So if you've got the blades leaning back and a pusher, I haven't flown one. I understand the concept behind it. And if you think about it, you're flying along with that pusher propeller and your engine quits. All that's going to happen is now you're just going to slow down and start to descend on its own, and that blade's going to keep turning. So you're basically flying around in an auto rotation, but it's horribly inefficient. I mean, aerodynamically speaking, but I mean, for a toy to go goof off, I mean, I could see why it wouldn't be a terribly bad idea. But you're basically in an auto rotation full time. That's why that main blade doesn't have power. Here we go. Bucket lights. Woohoo! Look at that. And car coming back in. You can still, over control it, smash it up on landing. But as far as flying, I would think it would be a pretty simple flying thing. I mean, to me, it's simplistic design. Safe, design dependent. Yeah, as long as you don't, people that don't fly could cause some problems. Let's go back to the early 1980s with ultralight aircraft, and the feds kind of took a hands-off approach to ultralight, and they said, okay, here's the rules. As long as it weighs less than 254 pounds, it can't fly over 55 miles an hour, and it can't carry more than 5 gallons of gas. That's the limits, and it's ultralight, and the feds took a hands-off approach. So here's the ingredients that came together. People who don't know anything about building aircraft, cutting every possible corner to save money, using non-aviation hardware. Oh, we got 16 wing spars. Oh, let's just put in 10. It's cheaper. Being flown by people who don't know how to fly. And then you put that all together in a pot. How do you think that's going to turn out? So it's good to get some flight training before you go out and start convincing yourself you can fly stuff. And there's some kit helicopter companies out there that build the Runaway Exec was one of them, and a couple other companies make little tiny helicopters. And what was happening is people would, it's kind of a snap together. They put them together, and as soon as they build the helicopter, these people immediately convince themselves, yeah, you can get a two-seater for training, quote unquote. But these people would go, oh, I could fly this, and they would ball them up. So what happened was these little kit helicopter companies will send you the entire kit except the tail rotor. Until you send them a copy of your pilot's license, they won't give you the tail rotor. Yeah, they put a two-seater. That's kind of a loophole because they put 2 seats in them and they go, oh, it's only for flight. Well, what's flight instruction? Flight instruction is anytime you have 2 people on board, which you can declare anything flight instruction. So that's why most ultralights have 2 seats. I knew a guy that had one back in the 80s, and he would take off and his dog would chase him. And he's, miles away, and he looks down and his dog's still chasing him. So he landed in the field and took off his belt and wrapped it around his dog and attached to the airplane. And from that day forward, his dog would go flying with him. And this guy had a friend, he's in Colorado growing up, had a friend that worked for Fish and Game or something, and they found an eagle that had been hurt somehow and lost one of its wings. Yeah, the pontoon. Again, it's a gray area. The things that make it heavier have a tendency to make it safer. Well, this guy had a bald eagle with one wing missing, and it was in like a little protected area because it couldn't fly, but they kept it alive. Well, one day he said, can you take this with you? So they made a harness, and they hung it under the wing of the ultralight. He put this eagle in the little harness, and he would fly, and you could watch its face. You could watch its head look around as it was focusing on, things, targets, animals, or rats or mice or whatever. But you could see it was totally entertained by hanging under that wing as they flew around. Kept looking over at it. It was just, doing its regular sleep. It got to where he would pick it up on a semi-regular basis and take it flying with him. So what's I got my dog on this side and an eagle on that side. What? Yeah, the things that make like ballistic parachutes, for instance, that's something else they put on some of the actual flights. Make them safer. I gotta move over again. It is 62 degrees outside. Wow, it dropped. Yeah, I kind of looked into ultralights with pontoons. I was just kind of eyeballing here not a year ago to get one that's a new one. That's something you want to use. It's about $30,000. So they don't give those things away. Place at 35 East in Ohio. Let's see, maybe 60 miles across, maybe 60 miles from Indiana. Back behind me, motoring towards Greenboro, North Carolina, or as close as I can get. And you have the 2 kinds of ultralights. You have the weight shift, where you're sitting on a suspended seat hanging by chains and you just hold on to the airframe and you move the airframe around. That's the old school. Then they put flight controls in it, like the Quicksilver brand. And then you have the trike ones, the Delta Wing trikes. It's basically a hang glider attached to a little three-wheeler harness with a propeller behind you. And that design's kind of simplistic, and I like it, especially with the high wing. So you're not hitting bushes and stuff coming in the van. 24.5 miles per gallon. So what I mean about this time of night, all the traffic kind of disappears. This is what I like right here. Let's see if I can find this guy. And bucket lights. And truck coming head on. I always thought about years ago being on some Caribbean island by a resort and buying lobster and delivering it to one of the resort places in an ultralight. You land in the ocean and you pull up to the beach and you get your cooler off and you're wearing a captain hat and an untucked, pilot shirt with shoulder boards, maybe some stains on it and a tie, and Hawaiian shorts and flip flops, and be delivering lobster load. And when I talked to a guy who's in the restaurant business, and he said that would go over just for the novelty of it, that your lobster were coming in a cooler being delivered by a old school drunk pilot, bush pilot. I always thought that'd be kind of a fun thing. That's many, many years ago. That was something through my mind. Uh, Radio is not a. All right. Bucket lights. And this guy's passing me. Taking the fun out of this, weight shifting, intuitive flight. Really like, yeah, that was the original ultralights uh, that they actually built specifically, because the original concept of an ultralight was by a guy with a hang glider who didn't live anywhere near a mountain, and he put a little 2-cycle chainsaw motor on his hang glider just to take off and fly till the engine quit, and ran for 5 minutes. He'd climb up, and then it would quit, and he'd glide down, and then it just kind of expanded from there. But the first company to start making weight shift, I believe, it was called Hipper, EIPPER. The model was called a Quicksilver, and ultimately the company changed its name to Quicksilver. And it was literally that it looked like a seat out of a swing. It's a seat with some chains, and you were sitting on it, and you would reach out beyond the chains and grab the controls. At this particular moment, Mr. Steve, I am eastbound 35, and on my GPS to the south of me is a town called Silver Creek Township. That's the only thing showing up on the map. Let me back it out a little. It's not really showing me anything else. I'm kind of off the beat path right here. But Silver Creek Township is the only thing. Whoops, wrong way. Yeah, I'm off the reservation right now, but I like it out here. It's nice and dark. So Silver Creek Township off of 35 east, and it says Jackson. I don't know if. Oh, wait a minute! I got a sign coming up. There we go. That doesn't help. I-71 is 7 miles ahead of me. Rotex, Absolute LS, yeah. Turbocharger, I don't know. Rotex had a hard start because they were kind of unreliable. And the problem with that is If you think about a two-cycle chainsaw, you fire it up and you go zing for 5 seconds or 7 seconds, and it goes back to idle. And you move stuff around and you go zing and you cut it along. They were taking chainsaw motors, including Rotex, and they were just running them wide open for an hour, and that they weren't designed for that. That's why they had a lot of problems. Rotex makes a good engine. Their break-in period is mind-boggling. Where you run it at idle for 5 minutes, and you basically put it in your aircraft, tie your aircraft to a tree, start it up, and run it for 5 minutes at idle, and 10 minutes at half throttle, and 5 minutes wide open for 5, and then 10 minutes at idle, and then it's an hour-long nightmare of breaking the motor in before you use it. I don't know the big one, the big Rotex, I think is the 912. That's the last time I looked at it, and I don't know if they had a turbocharger available, but that would be kind of cool. There was a company, and I don't know if they do this anymore, but they made what was called a half Volkswagen engine. Take a 4-cylinder air-cooled bug motor and chop it in half and make it a 2-cylinder. They've been up to all the 9 series Rotexes, liquid-cooled heads. That's cool. But the half bug engine, I think, was for light. It was only 30 horsepower, but it was 2-cylinder air-cooled. It sounds like they're talking you out of their cars. You're going to hit 71, and you're going to take it all the way across West Virginia and head north. I don't know. This shows the next turn is 48 miles from here. I don't know what that. I haven't looked. I looked at the map before I took off, but that was like hours ago. I don't even know at this point. I'm just following the road. I'm just going until I can't go, and I'm going to figure out where I'm going to sleep. 2 strokes in aircraft. Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you. The idea of a 2-cycle in a flying machine, I've had that conversation with people before. I love 2-stroke in dirt bikes back in the day. I don't even know if they do that anymore, but 2-cycle flying machines just don't work for me. You ever seen how a train steam engine operates? It's basically a 2-stroke. But it's steam, but it's a 2-stroke design. It's kind of simplistic, but yeah, 2-stroke and flying don't go together. I've seen guys that have made these homemade flying things, and it's like kind of like a helicopter, but it's not. It's just fixed blades, and it was powered by 3 2-cycle engines, and it would come up off the ground. He could lean it around and fly. I'm thinking if you lose one engine, you're dead twice because you can't auto rotate, you can't control it. I'm watching this guy try to fly this thing. I said, dude, you're an idiot because you can't auto rotate because you can't adjust the blade pitch. All you can do is speed it up and slow it down. You lose the motor, you're falling out of the sky. And you got 3 2-cycle engines. You have tripled your chance of falling out of the sky. Yeah, when it comes to mechanical things, I like simplistic, but I like simplistic and reliable and take care of it. That's why this van's been good to me, because I spend the money on the maintenance. And I give it the best oil I can find, which is I run Castor Oil 520 Edge full synthetic, which is the best stuff Castrol puts out. The computer tells me when to change the oil, and I change it short. I don't let it go to where it says, okay, change it now. I change it before that time gets here to keep up on it. But I'm real particular about maintaining stuff. And don't abuse your equipment. I don't care what it is. Rain, snow, water, a 3-cylinder Yamaha 2-stroke outboard. Yeah, I mean, I agree. When I was a kid, we had a snowmobile, around 2-stroke. But chainsaws, that's not, that works. That reminds me, I was reading this. It was about people in history that made a mark that you didn't even know existed. There was this guy that was an inventor, and he liked to create things, just come up with an idea and create something and make it. And as soon as he was done, he was bored, and he would move on to something completely different. And in the 1950s, it was the guy that invented the first hairdryer, the coil with the blower fan inside. That was something. But in the 1930s, the guy invented the outboard motor, and he gave it to his buddy. It was done. Bill Evinrude. Here you go. You can have this. I'm on to something else. And he patented it, and all of a sudden we have Evinrude motors all over the place. Let's see here. East, that's Sonia Columbus, Tennessee. No, it wants me going this way. All right, going straight. Going straight. Now, this is a good road to be on. I'm kind of digging this. I've been on some of these secondary roads. It's just nothing but traffic lights and towns for days. Sorry, gotta blow the schnoz again. I'm back. Normally, when I'm on here streaming, I just talk to my phone, which is hooked up to the Bluetooth in the vehicle. But right now, I'm on a headset. Does this sound any different, or does it sound the same, better, worse? I'm just curious. Big headlights. Ew. Happening again. Woo. 8 o'clock. Holy crap. Wow. Yeah, it's, hold on. Lights. Yeah, it's 11 o'clock here. I'm in Eastern time zone. Or snickety. I mean, back in the 80s, dirt bikes were, the race bikes were two-cycle. They were a lot of fun to play, but that was for a very specific purpose. If you wanted to go out and just ride around and trail ride, a four-stroke would be a better machine, more reliable, and way better on fuel. David and Dog says, talking to your headphones is better than talking to stupid. Yeah, but what can you do? I was saying the CB radios out here are quiet until something happens, and all of a sudden everybody's got something to say. And it's kind of funny to hear the conversations. They're kind of exchanging mild insults, and it's kind of entertaining. Nobody's being truly hostile, but if I'm listening to music or something, I'll turn it off and turn the radio up. Ring ding smell addiction. Ring ding 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 smell addiction. What? Ooh, uh, we switch something here. Whoa, get out of the report. All right, bending down. Switching to a different set here. Washington CH. I don't know what that means. There we go. And glasses. I have ham radio. Yeah, ham radio. I had a guy, one of my customers I talked to, he had that giant antenna on his truck, and I asked about that. And I said, what would be the procedure to have a gigantic antenna to be able to listen? And in my brain, it was have a big, tall antenna. And he said, no, you run it about 6 feet off the ground and you run it around your yard, around the fence line. But it's down low because he said if it goes up too high, you get a lot of static and stuff. I didn't know that. So when I get to my last home, my last house, I think I'm going to run a big antenna and have a receiver. I don't want to be transmitting, but I want to be able to hear what's happening in the world outside of the internet. Two strokes even have a lawn mower like that. Have lawn buoy mower, lawn buoy, lawn buzzy. Oh, lawnmower two-stroke? Isn't it two-stroke? No, well, the ones we had weren't. You just pour with straight gas and ham radio. Yeah, that guy, he talked about ham radio. I think that's cool because Right now, everything's attached to the internet, and the government, click if they don't want you, something's going down and they don't want you knowing about it, click, they just shut it off. That's cool. Yeah, see, that's how information gets out there. They say, oh, they'll just jam the frequencies. Do you know how much power it takes to jam all the radio frequencies? A lot. But yeah, that's why I like old school. That's, again, the CD radio, as ridiculous as that is. You can boost one of these things, you can get a pretty good shot out of them. Generally speaking, that nowadays off-the-shelf CD radios only have 4 watts of power, but no one's ever going to stop and test yours to see what it has. You can give it to a CD shop and boost it. I had one radio a while back. It was way too big for what I needed, and it was 22 watts of power. So you plug that in and give it a big antenna, and you can fire that thing some distance. Talk about suppression of news. The Canadians watch a lot of American TV because up in Canada, the government suppresses things that they don't want people knowing about. There was a while back, there was a serial killer running loose in Canada. They didn't want it to make people think bad, so they didn't talk about it at all. The government just blanked it out. So the Canadians were watching American news to figure out what was going on. All depending on the ships. On the skips, yeah. Trying to read here, small print. Yeah, it depends on the skip, like nighttime and stuff. As a kid, I grew up in Colorado, and basically the entire population of the state lives on a north-south line on the eastern slope of the state. So the Rockies were to the west of us. And at night, I remember in the early 80s, we had a radio, just a regular little radio, and you could turn it on, and at night you would get radio stations out of Los Angeles. Oh, Canada Power Boost Radio built to Amplifier. Yes. The ionosphere, yeah, bounces off. Radar does that too. They found out how to skip radar over the horizon. I'm not sure what it's hitting, but I know it works. The military started doing that. But we just had a regular AM FM radio, and we would pick up LA radio stations over the Rockies, what's that, 800 miles, 600 miles, whatever. Here's one more talking about radios. North of Fort Collins, Colorado, there is an array of towers, and it is the International Time Keeper. And we lived at one point, we rented a place, and we lived less than a mile away from that place. Frequency dependent, yeah. And you could see the towers lit up like a Christmas tree. And if you turned on a radio, it stomped on all the frequencies. But you flipped your radio on, and all you would hear was tick, tick, tick. At the tone, the time is 11:05. Boop. Then bad radio go back to tick, tick. It was like the international time generator thing. Yeah, right on. And have chicken on an AM station. Yeah, I like old-fashioned radio. I listen to AM radio going down the roads at times. I had a job in Houston that kept me on the road all the time. In Houston, I listened to news talk. People looked at me like I had 2 heads. You listen to AM radio? Yeah. You get news, you get commentary. When an AM was the schnizzle. I tell you what, that's something about AM radio back in the 70s was like, yeah, the FM was still kind of a new thing. And here's something a lot of people don't realize. Rush Limbaugh, and there's people who love him, people that hate him, but Rush Limbaugh saved AM radio. He's the guy that came up with the idea of just news talk, commentary news talk in 1988. And it started to spread, and then it picked up, and everybody started doing it. AM radio was circling the drain by the late 80s. And he literally saved that industry. And think of how many people today have jobs on AM over a concept that he came up with. Like I said, love him or hate him, the guy saved AM radio. And you could just think about them, all the radio stations out there that do the talk formats in the morning. It's a 23 channel. That's old. Yeah, the old 23 channel radios. I remember those. And I was at a CD shop, and there's one close to my house in Texas. And you walk through the door, and it's like 1977 when you walk in there. Just the whole aura of the place. And I asked the guy about that. I said, now the radios are limited to 4 watts. And he goes, yeah, but literally nobody was going to come and test to see how much power. Wait a minute. Harvey was the first broadcast. He did, but he only had his little tiny segment. That was it. Whereas Limbaugh did a 3-hour thing because they could have put that anywhere. Because I remember listening to Paul Harvey on FM back in the 80s. Phil was something used to fake calls to himself. Low rent. Phil something. Wait a minute. I'm trying to remember. Something. Not Art Bell. Phil. I know who you're talking about. What the heck was that guy's name? Yeah, he would get mad and that's just outrageous. That was like his catchphrase. But Art Bell did that coast to coast thing. I've heard bits and pieces of it, but I never listened to it regularly. But yeah, I know what you're talking about. What the heck was that guy's name? Crap. Yeah, I don't. I'm coming up with a blank here. Phil something. Oh, yeah, but Art Bell did his program. He was out of Arizona or something. He talked about aliens and all kinds of crazy stuff, and they syndicated him. Which if you're driving like this in the middle of the night, and you got nothing going on. This is before cell phones and all that stuff. You could listen to that stuff, and, pass the time. I drove home from Las Vegas once after working a 2-week hitch in the middle of the night. I'm driving through Amarillo, Texas, coming out the east side. Then you head southeast out of Amarillo on 287. You got middle of nowhere. It's just pitch black out there. There's just a couple little towns, but you're driving for 50 miles at a pop, and you're the only thing on the road. And I'm playing on my AM, and I found the on AM High Plains Radio Network, and it was playing all kinds of fun stuff. And it was the only station I could pick up, and I listened to that for a couple of hours. Really enjoyed it. But I guess it was, I don't know what it was. High Plains Radio Network is what they call themselves. Bill something called himself. Yeah, whatever works. My uncle, when he drove truck for about 50 years, and he had one of those booster microphones, and he could click it back and forth so he could make it sound like he was close and far away. And my uncle would get in an argument with himself, and he would be throwing insults back and forth. Phil Henry, Phil, is that? Yeah, the name, you're right, it's something like that. But my uncle would get in an argument with himself on the radio, and then somebody else would join it. Just some random person arguing about something. And so he'd have a 3-way argument involving only 2 people, exchanging insults and talking about something controversial, something to stir the pot, and then people would join in. It's how he passed the time. I just got back to chicken. People asked why I was running, flapping my arms, told I was trying to read this. Chicken showed the chicken. Do you remember that movie that came out in 1980 called Airplane? And we just watched that the other day, and I hadn't seen it in years. And they're having like a flashback to when he was in the hospital from the battle over Macho Grande. And she's talking to him, are you feeling better? And then some guy sitting on his bed starts flipping his covers up and recorded something, points under his bed. He's yelling, there's the tunnel, there's the tunnel. And he goes, what's wrong with him? And he says, oh, he thinks he's a tunnel rat in a POW camp in World War II. And then she looks off to the side and says, well, what's wrong with that guy? And he says, oh, he thinks he's Ethel Merman. And then Ethel Merman sits up and goes, there's no business like show business. And they push her back into the bed. It's literally Ethel Merman singing. What is wrong with you people? Hopefully recorded something, yeah. I got a kick out of that. Yeah, if you're ever bored, you want to watch some old school humor, go watch Airplane. If you remember the airlines in the 70s, it's a lot of flashbacks. The Blob. You're talking about the movie The Blob? Phil Henry. Recommended Phil Henry. Yeah, that name seems familiar. Yeah, he would call himself and come people calling him. One dude called in because he got pulled over. He got given a ticket in Los Angeles for driving down the shoulder, but he was important because he owned two restaurants and he had to drive between the restaurants, and the police had no business pulling him over because he's so important, because he owned the restaurants or something. And he would, yeah, you're right, he would get mad at himself, go back and forth and yell. And yeah, I remember him. He's not around anymore, is he? Here we go. Big headlights. Whoa. Trailer park type 2. Yeah, there you go. Exactly. Trailer park stuff. Trailer park humor. Yeah, I'm liking this highway 35 east through Ohio. Look at this. There's nothing out here. I love it. Yeah, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if this thing stops streaming for a few seconds and comes back, I'm going to stay on here for a while because talking to you guys keeps me awake and it helps. But I haven't had a single interruption here, so that's a good sign. But in case it disappears, because it will come back. I'm not going anywhere. Let's see, 24.3 miles per gallon. I love the headlights on this thing. When I was a kid, when I was a teenager, we used to listen to a radio show on Saturdays. It was on for 2 or 3 hours called the Prairie Home Companion in Anchorage. There was a bar called the Monkey Wharf, and they had real monkeys. You're talking about Alaska. There was in the 70s. There was a radio station kind of in the middle of nowhere, and it was an AM station. And I don't understand the mechanics of this, but at a certain time, they would open the frequency for people to use. It says, like Joe Dirt Nightly. Now you can find his kind of stuff and just ran through. Some people had, like, I don't know, it was ham radios or CD. I don't know what it was, but people could use the radio station's tower to boost their transmissions and make more or less phone calls, but they were on a radio. And it was just kind of interesting because whatever you were saying was being transmitted and the whole world could hear it. And it was like entertainment where people would boost and live out in the sticks, would boost their transmissions and call and talk to somebody really quick. And there was one famous, this happened in the late 70s. The guy, they were at a camp somewhere and he said something to the effect of, we need another helicopter. And they say, well, we don't have a spare helicopter. We can bring you parts. What do you need? They said, no, we need another aircraft. They said, well, what's the problem? He goes, well, the aircraft's in the water and the pilot says it's upside down. Either way, we need a new helicopter. And you're like, oh, okay. The children above average. Oh, God. Well, the women are strong, the men are good looking, and the children are above average. That's right. We listened to that religiously in the 80s, and he retired. Garrison Keillor retired. By the way, he had the same birthday. He retired and moved to Europe. He got married, moved to Europe, and whatever happened fell apart, and he came back stateside, and then he started another radio show called the American Radio Company, and that went for a while. And then he got back on the Prairie Home Companion again. And then he retired and gave it to some other guy. That ran for a while. And then COVID, oh, his voice was perfect. And then COVID came along and shut the whole thing down, and COVID ended, and it never came back. So that ran from like 1974 until just a couple of years ago, and the whole thing just kind of, the Orpheum Theater, but yeah, then it just never came back, and that was it. It just went away. Minnesota Public Radio. Like the family radio station. Yeah, but it was the people. Somehow you could turn on your radio and listen to it. Listen to these conversations. Again, this is coming up on 50 years ago. I don't really understand the technology. I was a kid back then. Not that I understand technology now, but that was back in the 70s when that was going on. I was talking about this the other day to somebody. There was a TV show called Ice Pilots, and it was actually in Canada. People thought it was Alaska. It was in Canada. It was a company called Buffalo Airways, and they deliver supplies to these outlying communities that don't have roads. You have cargo planes, old World War II-esque cargo planes. And it was just kind of showing the life, day in the life, how they do their jobs and stuff. And they have these young people show up, and they work in the warehouse loading aircraft, and they're there for a while. And then they stick them in the cockpit. And these old planes have a pilot, a co-pilot, a second officer who's doing fuel balancing, and an engineer, which is a fancy way of saying a mechanic. So they needed a full crew. We had this dude, Garrison, was by start. It's old school. Yeah, he was. And we had this guy that used to hang around with a little group of people I hung around with, and we called him the Commando. The Commando is one of those guys that went through his whole life really accomplishing nothing, and he had spent some time in the military, so he decided he was a Green Beret, which he was not, but he thought he was, so he would talk all this Green Beret garbage. So the Commando always had these grandiose plans of these big important things he was going to do, which he never did. And then one day he appears and he says, I'm moving to Alaska and I'm going to become a bush pilot. A bush pilot is somebody who lands off airports, lands in dirt roads, just away from normal airport areas. And how you become a bush pilot is you become a regular pilot, and you go through the process of learning how to fly. You get a lot of experience, and then you start flying off field. But this guy based his future job based on that TV show. So in his mind, he was going to pack his bags, move to Canada, and he was going to go work the warehouse in Buffalo Airways. And then they were going to see what a hard worker he was and stick him in the aircraft. And I had to explain to him about the crew requirements for these airplanes. And they said, dude, pilot, co-pilot, second officer, flight engineer. Nowhere in there do you get to reduce one of those people and stick a guy with stars in his eyes in the cockpit. I said, every one of those people that come up there are qualified pilots with single multi engine tail wheel, instrument, turbine, radial engine experience. They're $250,000 into their flight training when they show up. They're just not grabbing people off the street and sticking them in the cockpit and they say, okay, pull on that lever when I say go. That's not how that works. Oh, but on the TV show, they. Yeah, up in Alaska, airplanes are like pickup trucks. There are people who will send, who live out in the outback, will send a family member to flight school to fly the plane. There was one family, they sent their daughter. So when they would go into town, the 16-year-old would fly the plane and the whole family would pile in. And she was the official pilot of the family. I thought that was kind of cool. The village communication done by CB, and the village has one phone. The entire village outside the village communications are extremely limited. Yeah, I get it. Bush pilots. Yeah, bush pilots. Yeah, PhD. Where is this? D&D. What? D&D. Where is this? What does that mean? What do you? Where is what? You talking about ice pilots? It was some. It's a company called Buffalo Airways. It's up in Canada somewhere. That's what you're asking. Dillingham. Oh, look at you. You know those. Look at you. I always thought they were in Canada. It was okay. I'll take your word for it. I'm not doing any research going down the road here. Yeah, this is a nice area to drive. Jeez. Digging it. Dillingham, Alaska. Yeah, you can go up to Alaska and find some old planes up there. And I love the sound of radial engines. There was an airplane made 1940, 2 years, 47, 48, 49, right in there. There was 2 years. They made a small line of these planes by Republic called a CB, SEAB, Look up a picture of that. I've seen videos of them in old black and white films. And then one day I'm at the Las Vegas airport, and there's one sitting there on its landing gear. That's the only one I've ever seen in my life. And it was just fascinating to see a piece of aviation history just parked under a shade hanger like that. But look up, if you're bored, if you got a phone, look up a Republic CB. Really funky looking seaplane. And the pilot had, the instrument panel in front of him, but there was only half a panel. The other half, you could stand up, step forward, and flip open the canopy or the windshield, open it up and step out, like pull up to a dock and get off the front of the plane. Real interesting layout. Yeah, if you ever get bored, watch some old episodes of that Ice Pilots. It's kind of interesting how they did that thing that worked. The problem with those old airplanes is aircraft, and this is true of all aircraft, when they get to a certain point, the airframe, you start having mechanical problems constantly. There's just a point where you don't want to work on it anymore. You don't want to fly because it's never going to be right. And they don't have parts for most of those old airframes. They're having to fabricate stuff. When I was in the helicopter world, once a airframe got to about 20,000 hours, it was so incredibly unreliable. There's always some little thing going wrong with it. That's why the companies always dump their helicopters at 20,000 hours. And I don't care how many times it's been overhauled. It's just never right. I've seen a grid operation super. I recognize that word. What is that? Egret. Yeah, I recognize the word. Is that an aircraft? Oh, Here, I got a statistic for you. During the Falklands War, the British went down there with all their equipment, and they didn't combat load their ships. They had a tendency to put all their eggs in one basket, all like-minded equipment together, which was not a good idea. And the Argentinians came in and fired all these anti-ship missiles. And the combat ships have jammers and flares, whatever, to jam the missile, but the cargo ships didn't. So they fired some big missile at a ship, a combat ship, and it jammed it. It turned, and there was a cargo ship called the Atlantic Conveyor, and it slammed into the side of it, and it sank, ultimately. Real big cargo ship. The problem was all the heavy lift helicopters were on board that ship, and the spare parts. But one helicopter had actually taken off the deck. They got the blades on it and had it flown off earlier in the day. So for the entire Falklands War, they had exactly one heavy lift helicopter. And at one point, they thought it was going to go in the drink, so they jettisoned the doors as part of the procedure to go in the water that apparently they have, but it didn't happen. They didn't have any spare doors, so they ended up flying it around with no spare parts and no doors on it for the entire Falklands War, and the aircraft never broke down once. Ungainly large turboprop. Rare. Oh, okay. Oh, flashing lights. All right, yeah. So they have this helicopter. They needed a whole bunch of heavy lift helicopters, but they just had poor man's U2. Okay, gotcha. There's another one. So he had this one Chinook helicopter with no spare parts, and it had to do all these different missions. And all they did was rotate. They did some oil changes on it, I guess, but they just rotated the crew and kept the aircraft flying the whole time, and it never broke down. And they were just taking it back so they could run it 24 hours a day, basically. And the Chinook has a 3-man crew, and it's designed to carry 44 people. If you just put troops in it. In the Guinness Book of World Records, the most amount of people ever crammed into a helicopter was a Chinook down there, and it was 105. 105 bodies got on it. Where have I been? Alaska, Anchorage, Junction, and Petersburg, Sligo. As a kid, I went to Anchorage, Fairbanks, Ketchikan, Juneau, and Sitka. Why is there suddenly looks like smoke and or lots of cars? Poor man's U2, yeah. Suddenly there's vehicles everywhere. Oh, so there's 2 police vehicles going the other way. Yeah, U2 formation. You're over. I remember at Ketchikan. I don't know what's going on there now. If the connection fails, adios. Yeah, yeah. They say it's the Chinook is 2 palm trees fornicating in a dumpster. 2 engines and 5 transmissions, and all of them leak oil. And they say that's a good thing. Why? Because if they're not leaking oil, that means there's no oil in it. Oh, okay. The one embarrassing thing about the Chinook was I flew Cobras, and a Chinook would absolutely blow our off. Our cruise in a Cobra was, if you were pulling on it, about a buck 35, and that Chinook could do a 160. Yeah, the Jesus nuts. Yeah, Blackhawks, when they first came out, the UH-60 Blackhawks, they actually had a problem with Jesus nuts. Because if you climb up on top of the airframe and look at the nut, it was in a little concave. And when it rained, water would sit in there. And it didn't have a drain hole. It wouldn't leave. It would just sit there. And they first came out in the late 70s. They had a couple of Jesus nut blade separations, blue blades, as they say. One blew this way, one blew that way, and it was all over that. It's just because water could sit in it. All right, I got 8.8 miles, and I might have a turn coming up based on what this says. Might be the key word. Somebody come over, check you, watch your food. 11:30. Wow. It's showing me 6 hours away. Wow. Never many fishing. Yeah. Well, sometimes you got to get things out there. I flew the 407s, which I don't know. I think the Bell 407 came out officially, got licensed in 96 or 97, the first generation. And a couple of things they found out after it was operational was on top of the rotor, on top of the mast, there was this weight, looked like a flying saucer. And the flying saucer weighed 60 pounds and had springs in it. It was supposed to help with vibration or something. And as time went on, they realized that it served absolutely no purpose whatsoever. It was just 60 pounds of dead weight. So they got rid of them. And eventually, as time went on, they all disappeared. And the second thing in a Bell 407, which is a high performance airframe with an articulate rotor system, is the pedals are boosted, hydraulically boosted, whereas in a long range or a jet ranger, they're just mechanical linkage. So if you're tapping on the pedals, you're getting a pretty quick response out of it, and the boost was helping you. Well, what would happen is pilots would be flying along, and if you're in a long ranger, if you push on the pedal, flying in a straight line, you stomp on the pedal, the aircraft would yaw to that side. Whichever way you push is the way the nose goes. And you could push on it, and the aircraft would like twist. Well, the aircraft's not designed for that high speed pressure against the tail boom, but then you're flying an aircraft that has the same long tail boom, but you have a boosted pedal. So I think what was happening is pilots were going, hey, check this out, stomping the pedal to the floor, and it's cranking that tail around, and the wind is hitting it at an angle that it's not designed to go, and it started ripping tail booms off. So the first thing they did was limit the airspeed. They didn't know what the issue was, so they said you can't. We didn't have one at the time. I'd never flown one in the early 2000s, and they found out that they just limit the airspeed to 100 knots because they couldn't figure out what was causing it until they figure out his pilot's hot dogging. But how they solve that problem is now when you take off, you're on the ground, hover taxi around, you can spin the tail wherever you need to. So it makes, I'm sure, road style. You're talking about the BK-117. Yeah, BK-117 has the clam doors. They used to have something called a bow cow, which is long gone. I don't think they have anywhere anymore. But the BK-117 is the one that has those doors. So what happens in a 407 now is you take off, and once you pass through 35 knots, you hear an audible thunk in the back of the aircraft. And what it's doing is locking out the tail rotor to limit how far it'll go. It's limiting what your pedals can do. And then as you slow back down to come in for landing and it drops below 35 knots, you hear it go thunk and it releases. And there's also a manual switch between the seats. If for some reason it doesn't release, you can reach down and pull the knob and it'll release it. But that was how they limited that tail boom from getting ripped off the airframe. And then once that happened, that problem went away. So it's basically hot dog pilots were causing the problems. The only problem I have, I've never messed with one of those. I've seen videos of them, and you're. I mean, if you're 5 foot tall, it would probably be okay, but if you're tall, it's a pain. Uh, one of the evacuations, one of the flights I did a long time ago, with passengers in the EMS world. I was flying out of Hobbs, New Mexico, and there's a helicopter over in Roswell, which has the name the Screaming Alien painted on the side of it. And the Screaming Alien was off on a mission somewhere. He got a call to back them up because they needed a bird out there. And it's not that far away in the air. So we packed up, flew out, landed at the hospital. I jumped over to the airport, topped off with fuel, came back, and they came rolling out with a girl. I think she was 14, and she had her leg broken in 2 places. In the hospital in Roswell, I'll be nice, it's a Band-Aid station. They don't really have surgical capabilities, per se. And they said this is way beyond our capabilities, so they called us to move to Lubbock. Lubbock, Texas had Women and Children's Hospital and a heart hospital and a couple other ones. And we were transporting her. In the air, it was like 85, 90 miles. On the ground, yeah, 150. But of course, her parents want to pile into the aircraft. But I was like, this is 4 bodies, and with medical, we don't have the ability to stick another person. Unless it was an infant, we could make an exception. So their parents were told where they're going. They jump in their car and they take off. And what we do is once they're in the rooms, we call their family and tell them, okay, we're on the 2nd floor, we're in room, whatever. That's normal. Okay, I got to slow down here. But this girl got in, and she was in shorts. And we were flying an A-Star, AS-350 at the time. And they put her in where I sit on the right. The pilot in the helicopter usually sits on the right. And the nurse and the medic are in the back seat. And the patient's over on the left side with their head at the back and their feet are kind of jammed up. Lubbock really moved up. Anyway, yeah. But she was laying in there, and she was wearing, hold on a second here. Make sure I'm not swapping paint with anybody. Is this Elaine? I hope this is Elaine. All right, hold on a second here. I got to pay attention. Stand by to stand by. I got to turn somebody here. But she's laying in there. She's wearing shorts. They got her wrapped up in a T-shirt, and her feet were poking out the bottom. And we always put a headset, on our patients, but we don't plug them in. We don't want them listening necessarily. If we need to talk to them, we'll plug them in. Other than we just leave the headset on. And she had a panicky look on her face. I mean, she was, okay, East Jackson, report. All right, I got to go straight. Hold on here. And she had a panicky look on her face. So we've got 45 minutes-ish flight to go, and she was not happy. And I said, plug her in. And they did. And I looked at her, I pointed at her feet, and I said, hey, she's got orange toenails. And of course, she looks down at her feet, and I say, how are we going to get that through customs? And as soon as I said that, the nurse picked up on it. She says, oh, no, that's right. The girl's like, what? He goes, oh, you can't have orange toenails in Texas. They got laws. We're going to have to get a waiver. Now she's like, well, what do you mean? Well, you're not allowed to have orange toenails. That's just state law. Okay, call. We're going to have to get customs there to get a waiver for this. Okay, so now this girl is all worried about her toenails. And the nurse, the medic, I don't know who made the call, but they get on the radio. We're 40 miles out, female 14, double break leg, blah, blah, blah. We give them vitals. And then she says she has pink or orange toenails. Can you call customs and get a waiver? And the person on the other end immediately picked up on that and said, we'll try to get them here. We'll see if we can get this taken care of in advance. We'll try our best. No, and it worked like a charm. So by the time we got her off the aircraft and we're rolling her in, she was almost losing her mind, worrying about, am I going to get in trouble and what's going to happen about my toenails? And as she rolled off, and I said, yeah, her parents will explain that to her later. I just got a kick out of that. That stuff works.